Do we really need music? Nah, maybe a little bit. Just because it helps us feel good. Sorry, I got an earbud in the nomination. I gotta take that on because I can't pay attention listening to the audio. Oh! All right, we still have confirmation hearings going. Welcome to Between the Numbers, right? Same host, People's Pundit. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them, share them far and wide, right? A little dark in here. Isn't it? Spending lunch out with the wife while we're listening to these confirmation hearings, because, of course, we're back to the season now. I lose the girls during the weekends most of the time. But look, trying to pull some audio here. Today, obviously, RFK had more he had to deal with. Today, we heard testimony much more appropriate to the point that I was trying to get across on Monday's or Wednesday's episode of Inside the Numbers. And I'm going to revisit that before we even go to the Gabbard hearing, which is going to be a very, very difficult hearing. I mean, you have Republicans. Here's the thing. Each Republican is full of crap in their own way, right? And you have cliques of Republicans, especially in the United States Senate, where they're full of crap in their own way. And while I'm playing the clip, I'm going to have to turn some lights on here. I look like a ghost. Many, obviously, are tied to the military-industrial complex. Many are opposed to it, right? And are more like MAGA, and they want to end forever war. However, you have many who are tied to Big Pharma. They took tons of money from them. And maybe some of them in that hearing are more MAGA. And sometimes those MAGA interests overlap, but sometimes they don't. Sometimes one senator is really good at pretending to be a super Trump supporter when it comes to never-ending wars, but is a Big Pharma bitch, right? And then vice versa. Maybe some are totally against Big Pharma, but they are national security skanks, all right? That's the trouble, and that's the challenge that the MAGA movement's facing. It's that their own party, not necessarily Democrats who you would expect to oppose you. I mean, they are in the opposition. You would expect them to do what opposition does, oppose. Just because you don't when you're in the opposition because you're corrupted and somebody can find some wedge or whatever it may be, some pressure point for you, doesn't mean that you should expect your political enemies to have the same flaws or the same issues when they are in the opposition. They oppose when they are in the opposition. And it's for the reason RFK so articulated beautifully yesterday during the hearing. All right, but Rand Paul had a rant today that goes more towards what I was talking about with the show yesterday, but also later in the day when I went on Battleground Live with Sean, which is this idea of like expert lies. It almost sounds like an oxymoron, right? Because it's not what you think it is. Like, you're an expert at lying? I mean, that comes with the territory. But what I'm talking about when I use this phrase or this term, I'm talking about discourse that is perverted by a professional class who's thought to be an expert in something, and they are telling lies. Those lies, if you oppose them, you'll be called a conspiracy theorist. 6 months down the road, you will find out that the experts were themselves, in fact, were lying, and that conspiracy theory was actually the truth. All right, we're going to go all the way back to the Iraq War. Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11. Oh my God, you're a conspiracy theorist. Oh my God, you're a terrorist sympathizer. Oh my God, you're an apologist for Islam, right? No, Osama bin Laden had nothing to do with the Ba'athist party leader in Iraq. Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with it. All right. All those years later, you find out, of course, Dick Cheney, Rumsfeld, the rest of them, even Tenet, had a hand in lying. Colin Powell goes to the UN, gives this grand speech. He's supposed to be Mr. Character, Mr. Integrity, and he turned out to be nothing but a bought and paid for little bitch who was lying. And you don't speak ill about the dead. I don't give a shit. All right. Going on and on and on. We can go through what Rand Paul goes through, but I'm not going to do that because it would be redundant. But it's over and over and over again. I mean, there are actually institutions that are entirely designed to push expert lies. The Congressional Budget Office is a perfect example of that. They are solely established during the new era, the extension of the New Deal. We know during the Johnson era as the Great Society. Their entire purpose being founded was so they could stick around and basically score poorly any policy that would reform big government and scale down bureaucracy, even though they're wrong all the time. And no one ever questions, like, why do we care about the Congressional Budget Office scoring? Entire committees will hold up their votes on it because they're waiting to hear from the experts, right? The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was statically scored, which is a garbage economic model. It was scored by static model using the CBO static model. And they projected that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act would not only not increase revenue, but it would in fact add trillions of dollars to the deficit over the next 10 years. 2 years into the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the CBO quietly releases an updated revision projection for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And wouldn't you know it? Static scoring is garbage. Dynamic scoring is better. That's number one, economically especially. And as we all anticipated, there's a Goldilocks zone with corporate tax rates. If you fall within it, which the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act did on the higher end, by the way, could have been better. But anyway, I digress. If you fall in it, two things are going to happen. Revenues to the Treasury is going to increase and wages are going to rise. 55 years of data from the developed world, not exactly right-wing institutions, the World Bank, the OECD, which is a leftist rag in Paris. I mean, all of these places, we knew this to be the case, yet we still had morons from both parties sitting in their committee waiting to see what the CBO projected. Those are expert lies. There doesn't matter that they are supposedly the professionals in their field. They're just human beings like the rest of us, and they're corruptible just like the rest of us. And you don't really even need an expert, as Sean said yesterday, to tell you what you know to be true, or to tell you that obviously there's something going on here. If we're trying to find a cause of something, if they're shutting down any approach to debate surrounding this thing as something, perhaps the cause of this problem, then obviously there's smoke. Where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Why won't they let you debate it? Why won't they let you talk about it? Man, Rand Paul went off today, and it was perfect. I think we borrowed this from Alex Jones, actually, if not C-SPAN. Oh, no, maybe it was real. Who cares? You'll see the thing on it. Credit to them. All right. Let's listen to Rand Paul before we get into anything related to Gabbard, because, man, it was perfect. Perfect.
Ask me my opinion. There were reporters run up and down the hall and they say, you still anti-vaccine? No, I'm pro-vaccine. But on the COVID vaccine and on the COVID illness, there was a 1,000-fold or more difference between the elderly and children. If you don't acknowledge that, you're committing malpractice. You're showing your ignorance. If you say a 6-month-old must be mandated to get it, the science is not there. So all this blather about the science says this and the science says that, no, it doesn't. The science actually shows that no healthy child in America died from COVID.
There's more.
Senator Paul. You know, I think the discussion over
we should have just went from this point, but okay.
Is so oversimplified and dumbed down that we never really get to real truths, and it's why people up here are so separated from real people at home. So we talk about hepatitis B. It's a terrible disease. It could lead to liver failure, as the chairman said. But the reason you have distrust from people at home, why they don't believe anything you say, they don't believe government at all, is you're telling my kid to take a hepatitis B vaccine when he's 1 day old. You get it through drug use and sexually transmitted. That's how you get hepatitis B. But you're telling me my kid has to take it at 1 day old. That's not science. And so every person with a bit of common sense, even people who don't resist vaccines, I vaccinated all my kids. I believe vaccines are one of the modern miracles beyond all pale. The Speckled Monster is a great book about the introduction of the smallpox vaccine in 1720 into our country. All miracles. But I'm not a one-size-fits-all. It's not all or nothing. I chose to wait on my hepatitis B vaccine, and we did it when they went to school. Does that make me an awful person? Does that make me an anti-vaxxer because I questioned the government dictate of whether I do it? And I'm not speaking for anybody else. I'm only speaking for myself. But for goodness sakes, let's have an honest debate about these things. The COVID vaccine. If you ask me,
let me just personally say, before we go on to the COVID vaccine, Laura and I do not do vaccines on the schedule with our children that they are recommended to do. Look, if you have kids and you ever did, the difference between any of them, or maybe you had friends who had kids their age, and maybe your wives, or maybe you guys did it, you went at the same time or roughly the same time. There is no doubt that when our friends jab their little ones immediately, I'm talking about immediately. Oh, they need this one and they need that and they need this and they need that. They come home, they spike fevers, they're miserable for days, and God willing, that's all they suffer as a result of it. Now, he's going to go on to say something that's important, but I'm going to say it right now a little bit ahead of time. If something happened to that other child, is that proof that the vaccine did it? No, it's not proof, but also you're not an idiot, right? Do you need a doctor to tell you it's probably a bad idea to inject a tiny little child without an immune system with a ton of crap that they don't really need yet? So just speaking from Laura and I, of course, by the time our kids got into school, they were vaccinated, but we did not load them up the way that the doctors always try to push you to do. If you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. Oh, you're not going to do 4 or 5 today? No, we're not. We're going to do 1 or 2, and we'll be back in a month and a half, 2 months. We'll see you then for his next checkup, and you can do it then. Or maybe, like he said, they're not going to get hepatitis. All right? We don't need that right now, or whatever it may be. They immediately want to jab them with everything under the sun. Polio is all but eradicated. Of course, to keep it eradicated, everyone should continue to get vaccinated. But it doesn't need to be the 5th shot on the damn regimen for the child when they're 2 months old or a month old. And look, you do what you want to do with your kids, but I did what Rand Paul's talking about. My wife is adamant about that. And we have 3 wonderfully, beautifully healthy children. I never got anything like this. And no, I did not give my children the COVID vaccination. None of them. And if you did, I don't know, in an hour, I'll read your read from the wellness company. All right. No, I mean, look, everyone's got their own different things, but there was absolutely no point, as he's going to bring up, there's no point to do that. You were forced to do it by an expert, or you were told, or they pressured you. They socially pressured you, right? They did that to make money. Unless your child had a pre-existing condition or there was something, very wrong with them, the doctor should not have been running around trying to pressure you to get a COVID vaccine for your kid, like your 12-year-old son. They all got COVID. They beat the crap out of it in 24 to 36 hours. My wife and I were a little sicker for a little longer. Everybody's different, of course. But generally speaking, those were expert lies. And Robert Kennedy had to discuss the case that we involved with years ago. That case started. Where it was the forcing of kids 6 years old to get vaccinated. Or making them. It's not even it's forcing by social pressure. It's like bullying. It's like medical bullying. Oh, you're so stupid. What's wrong with you? You an anti-vaxxer, man? You one of those Trump supporters, man? Whatever approach they got to take for you to get convinced to poison your child before you even know what the hell is in it or what it's going to do to the kid.
My opinion, the reporters run up and down the aisle and they say, you still anti-vaccine? No, I'm pro-vaccine. But on the COVID vaccine and on the COVID illness, there was a 1,000-fold or more difference between the elderly and children. If you don't acknowledge that, you're committing malpractice. You're showing your ignorance. If you say a 6-month-old must be mandated to get it, the science is not there. So all this blather about the science says this and the science says that, no, it doesn't. No. The science actually shows that no healthy child in America died from COVID. Look it up. No healthy child died from COVID. And so the thing is that it's 1,000-fold greater. So if you ask me my advice as a physician, if you were 65 or older or overweight and some other conditions, I would have said, hell yes, I'd take the COVID vaccine. The risks of the disease were real and much greater than the vaccine. But if you ask me, should my healthy 6-month-old get it? See, these are the nuances you're unwilling to talk about because there's such a belief in submission. Submit to the government. Yep. Do what you're told. There is no discussion. There ought to be a debate. You're not going to let him have the debate because you're just going to criticize and say, it is this and admit to it or we're not going to appoint you. But it's more complicated than that. And this is why people distrust government, because you're unwilling to have these conversations. And go home, ask your Democrat young mothers, your Republican young mothers, if they're vaccinating their kid for hepatitis B and they're like, well, do I have to do it on day one? It's this precious little baby. Is there science to say you shouldn't do it? Probably not, but it's my kid. You know, it's like, there isn't clear-cut science saying not to. But on autism, there's no good science of anything to show what causes autism. We don't know. It's a profound disease. I know many moms here and dads who have kids with autism. I know them personally. I've met their kids. But the thing is they saw their kids developing completely normal, maybe speaking 100 words go to no words at about 15 months of age. Now, there isn't proof. There isn't proof that the vaccines cause it. That's true. There isn't proof that it causes it. But we don't know what causes it yet, so shouldn't we be at least open-minded? We take 72 vaccines. Could it be? I don't know. But we shouldn't just close the door and say we're no longer, because we believe so much in submission, we're not going to have an open mind to study these things. And so it's sort of this crazy notion. Schizophrenia, I would put in the same notion. You have a kid who's completely normal to 18 or 19, and their brain goes haywire. How does that happen? It's the most bizarre disease. Shouldn't we be open? Could it be our food? It might be vaccines, it might be our food, but autism is more common.
Might be a combination. We don't freaking know, because the people who fund the very people sitting on the chairs right now deciding whether or not to confirm Robert Kennedy and everyone else for that matter are all taking money from people who don't want us to know. And they all have friends in government, the Food and Drug Administration, the Institute of Health. They're all in this partnership to keep us from asking any of those difficult questions. And I'll tell you, as far as the autism thing, I just don't know where to stand on. Something causes it. I stand where you stand. Something's causing it, but who the hell am I? Or who is any expert for that matter, since there really isn't sound science on this? I have a friend. His kid, I'm not going to say any names, looked perfectly fine. You're not going to tell him that vaccines didn't hurt his child. You're not. And I'm not going to tell him that, even though I can point him and say, hey, bro, like, you know, look, this is what they want you to read on this. I'm just telling you. But he will tell you, no, he was developing fine. Packing him with all this shit and diet. He's big on diet, too. They were all being poisoned, and it hurts some people more than others. And we're being poisoned by people who are in charge of telling us what is and what isn't safe. And I'm hear what he's saying. It's like, who am I? I am a father. I get it. Nobody knows my kid better than me. Nobody. If I saw a change in his behavior from one event to another, I'm going to blame that event too. But it doesn't matter anyway, because we're not really allowed to explore any of this. What's in preservatives, processed foods. We're not allowed to discuss any of this. Even stuff that they use as binders for pharmaceuticals. The effects of those pharmaceuticals themselves. He brought up something before, which some people think are linked to what I was talking about before. All of a sudden, we have, and it's like, it would be different if this was consistent, but there seems to be ages where schizophrenia develops. However, there's an increase in this, just like there's been a 1% increase in youth cancer over the last, year over year for many years. Like, what on earth is the reason for this? Something has to be the cause. Well, if you thought that it was in a chemical imbalance in a child's brain, why they were a little bit sad all the time, and you pumped them filled with a bunch of bullshit you didn't know what they was going to do with since they were like 12 years old, and the school nurse called them in 2-3 times a day to make them take their pill. Well, God, I don't know. Maybe it messed around with their wiring a little bit. And oops, look at that. Turns out depression may not be what we thought it was after all, like he says. Science isn't some totem you worship. Science is like a set of things that we think we know right now. And 20 years from now, or 10 years from now, or 2 days from now, it could be different. It could change. I think ultimately people forget that like science isn't truth. And that's where we seem to have gone awry here. And I'm going to let him finish, but then I want to show you a chart that I dug up. It's the very first one we did, which indicated that there was a relationship between adverse effects and age. And then over the course of not months, at first it was months, years, this has roughly been duplicated, which is such a strong finding. There's such a strong finding in that relationship, and yet nobody has, well, recently they've begun to look at it, but it took so long. Why? And why weren't we allowed? Why were we blacklisted for publishing those things on places like Fox News? Why was there a blacklist? No, you cannot put that poll up on Fox.com. Why? I think we know the answer to that. Turn on Fox News and wait for a commercial. There's your answer. Go, Rand.
I don't know about the schizophrenia statistics, but autism is more common. Shouldn't we want to be open-minded? Instead, we're so closed-minded and we're so consensus-driven that the science says this. Well, science doesn't say anything. Science is a dispute, and 10 years from now, we could all be wrong.
Hey, yo.
We were told in the beginning, 20 years ago, they did this enormous study, and they said, everybody over 50 should take an aspirin. I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea. It makes sense. But you know what? 20 years later, they measured it. And they found if you had no heart disease and you were taking aspirin, your chance of dying from a brain bleed or from a stomach bleed were greater than the risk of heart disease. If you have heart disease, they still say take an aspirin. If you don't, they've changed their mind 20 years later. But would you have all said I was crazy and I should no longer be in public discourse if I had said 20 years ago, I don't feel like taking an aspirin. I ride my bike all the time. I'm afraid I might hit my head. But that's what country's about. What does
crazy conspiracy theorists? Wow, what an aspirin denier! This is just science denier. Go ride your bicycle, Trump supporter.
Dissent is about. So just ask you to look at the larger picture and give the guy a break who says, I just want to follow the science where it leads without presupposition. I think really what we have up here is presupposition. You've already concluded. Yep. It's absolute that autism isn't caused by it. We don't know what causes autism, so we should be more humble in what we say. Sorry, I didn't get to a question.
Unless
we don't need the rest of that. That's his. Whoop. Yep. Yeah, we don't need the rest of that. That's his little thing. There it is. And hat tip, credit to Alex Jones for clipping that. Okay. I want to show this chart real quick. It's one of the first ones that we did do. I believe it is the first one that we did do. And obviously it is the effects on a horizontal stacked bar chart. Okay. It shows you the COVID-19 vaccine adverse effects by age. It doesn't matter if you break this down by age detail. It does not matter. And let me just look and see if I can find that date. This is the fall of 2021. I think this is the first one. I'd have to go back to the data sets and see, and actually we could right now if you wanted to. I don't know how long it's going to take me to go through it, but I found this one. I thought this was the first one. But as you can see, right, I experienced severe adverse effects that prevent daily activity. This is the total, and this is, of course, showing you the age. Obviously, only about 5%, 5.2% told us at the time. This number has since gone up, by the way. I experienced severe adverse effects that prevent daily activity. The other one, I experienced mild, et cetera, et cetera. By age, you could see that only 2.3% of seniors, totally 65 and older, not senior versus super senior. This is a larger age group here. You could see there 2.3%. If we were to split them up, you would see that it would actually go down a little bit as, as the older they get. It's like a very, very clear relationship. The younger they get, the larger that number is. Okay. So overall, the 18 to 29s had the most severe adverse effect. The younger you were, the more severe of an adverse effect you experienced. And this didn't change over time at all. The only thing that changed is that the number of people who experience severe adverse effects has roughly tripled. The relationship between age is the same. And when you ask people, do I know somebody that also did? So either you or them, and about another 7% is added to that, which gets you about 22%. So over time, the numbers grew, but age related, it's still the same. It's not a perfect comparison. When you look, by the way, at the Four Freedoms poll, which I had recently put out the other day, but if you do look at the Four Freedoms poll, you will see that that age relationship continues. All right. So oops. Why does this keep doing this? It keeps taking me off it too. Okay. So let me show you what I mean by that. All right. So here is the Four Freedoms poll. And here is when we ask people, and I'm going to keep me on there in case it pops off again. I know it's a little hard to see. And I'll do by age. Let's go by age, right? Have you or anyone close to you? And now you can see, by the way, it's 22 because it's a little under 15 if it's just you. And then when you say anyone else, it expands by roughly 7%. So it gets to over 1 in 5 who actually have experienced a severe adverse effect, or somebody who like personally close to you. The definition here is close to you, not somebody you saw post something, oh, pray for my family member on Facebook. He got the COVID vax and now he's got myocarditis. This is somebody you either know as a close and personal friend or family member you interact with daily. Okay. So 18 to 29 is obviously the highest at 30% who say yes. 30 to 34 has grown quite a bit over the years, but it is still the second highest. You can see it going down as people get older. 18% among those who are 45 to 64 and 15% who are 65 and plus. A lot bigger than it was back in 2021, but the relationship is still the same. And it doesn't matter if we go to 2021 or where's another one here. This is the fall of 2021. So let's look at the early spring of 2022, for instance, like March of 2022. It doesn't matter. When else did we ask this? This is May of 2022. Same damn thing. So, I mean, you can continue on and on and on and on. And then, by the way, pre-Labor Day of 2022, so right before the holidays, same thing. So we did this numerous times over the course of both of those years, still do it to this day, and the relationship is still the same. The difference is now Rand Paul can say that, and there won't be 50 CNN headlines with Dr. Fauci, Deborah Birx, this one and their colleague, this one and their mother, this one and their mistress, this one and their stepson, this one and and their 6th grade science teacher, like whatever. The only difference is more debate has been able to permeate the national discourse now. It's not just Rand Paul, RFK, and a couple, brave voices like Dr. Bhattacharya or, McCullough, whatever. There's a handful of them. We know the names. Or Malone, right? Now obviously it's open for debate. So, okay. So there it is. And that's what all of these nominees are really pushing against here. People who, like he said, they like worship the consensus. And here's the problem with the consensus. It can be bought. A polling consensus can be purchased. A science consensus can be purchased. A consensus on climate change can be purchased. They're purchased with grants. They're purchased with payoffs. They're purchased with political favors. But, just carry on and continue to act like all of this data is nonsense. And all of these consensus findings are pure and credible. It's just total BS. All right. The rest I just want to do here is let's do Gabbard's opening statement here. Yeah. Okay. So Tulsi Gabbard came out swinging. If I accidentally cut off the last of it, I have it. I just didn't have enough time to make sure. So if I do, you know what though? Real quick before we do that, Wednesday I was real hard on Bernie Sanders. Well, here's RFK saying exactly what I couldn't believe. I told Sean last night on Battleground, I'm like, I cannot believe that no one's coming out and saying it. Sean knew how much money Bernie Sanders took. I know how much money Bernie Sanders took. Everyone up there took money from these people. When I tell you Pfizer hired an army of K Street lobbyists to go and buy these senators, I am not BSing you. During the pandemic, it was an influx of lobbyists, even remarkable for K Street. They saw it was time to strike while the iron was hot, and they did. And now they got all these people in their back pocket. Even Bend Over Bernie, who pretends to be champion of the little guy, he is the biggest con artist up there. Because at least the rest of them never pretended to be a champion of the little guy. I'm the left-wing populist here. You are full of crap. You buy Bernie Sanders a new house, and I keep saying that because they did. You buy Bernie Sanders a new house, and he will be your bitch for life. And that's who he is to this day.
I'm going to make America healthier than other countries in the world right now.
Will you guarantee do what every other major country does? That's a simple question.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, no,
and protecting their interests.
Oh, I thought that would come. No. I ran for president like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money from the pharmaceutical industry. They came from workers.
In 2020, you were the single largest
because I had
receiver of pharmaceutical money.
Let me just stop right there because Bernie Sanders is doing what textbook politicians do. He's obfuscating. He's not talking about his run for president. Bernie Sanders takes money from Big Pharma for Senate and everything else he's done. And then notice he qualified. When I ran for president, I didn't take any Big Pharma money in my PAC. That's the only way money comes through to Bernie Sanders? What a scam artist. What a scam. It's about time somebody gets up there and says that. Frankly, I don't know why anybody who went up against the deep state like Tulsi Gabbard hasn't had the guts to say something like what RFK just said to them about Big Pharma and also what Tulsi said in front of that committee today. All right, she should have had a better answer for one question. I cannot believe she didn't. I know why she was doing it, answering it the way she was answering it, but it was not like you needed a better answer. All right. And I wouldn't have equivocated like she would. I would have taken my position, which I will take, and I will say to you in a second, and I just defend it. I will defend my position. And at least at that point, again, because this is really an argument for public opinion. And as we're going to see later, I told you I'm looking to see a few things here every time. And it hasn't changed since 2 weeks ago when I first told you this. Do Democrats, are they saying things and asking questions and prodding it? Like, are they on a message that tells me two things? One, they understand why they lost this election. And two, they have a new direction they're going to go in that could be potent and used against Donald Trump and the MAGA agenda. And I told you they're losing, with the exception of one or two days last week when they went on about baseline, again, obfuscated about what baseline budgeting is and freezes on increases of spending. They call that a cut in Washington, D.C. When you stop the automatic increase of federal spending every single year, they call that a cut. All right. And they were smart with that messaging. And then they went off the rye again. And you can see they're super unpopular. They are so unpopular. Nobody in my industry has ever seen their popularity as low as they are. I told you that they were dropping like flies. Self-identification for Democrats is plummeting. I am being as fair as I can be for as long as I can be, trying to say, well, maybe we'll increase the urban vote share. Maybe that's the issue, and it's justifiable. But the truth is, at this point, even adding more rural responses to the sample, for instance, and not even waiting, but just like representing rural voters isn't increasing the number of self-identified conservatives. That's weird, right? And I'm lamenting about this, but it's important. But on the flip side of that, even increasing the representation for urban voters is not increasing Democratic identification. So somehow the country's getting more Republican, but more moderate at the same time, and Democrats are getting super unpopular. Meanwhile, Trump is about to hit Reagan numbers if this continues. I'm not kidding. That's where we are. Reagan, who won every single state in his reelection, except, of course, for Minnesota, right? State. Nobody cares what the District of Columbia did. By the way, Trump and Reagan have that in common. Landslides that the District of Columbia didn't vote with. That alone, that long-time, long-ass track record of the District of Columbia having completely different interests than the rest of the country should be reason enough to dismiss forever the idea that DC should have Senate representation. Ah, God, man. All right, but going back to Bernie and him attempting to explain away this money. And this is the load of crap. Anyone can go to Open Secrets and you can find it right now.
From workers all over this country. Workers, not a nickel from corporate
Bernie,
tax.
you were the single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
No, from workers in the industry.
1.5 million.
Yeah, out of 200 million. All right,
million.
But you have not answered. Last question.
Okay, so there it is. By the way, we can look and see. Oh my God, why does that keep happening? We can look and see it, maybe because there needs to be an update to Chrome. But an absolutely outrageous amount of money that Kamala Harris has taken from Big Pharma. And I actually have it right here, and I'm going to show it. This is over time. It's not just in 1 year, as you can see. It's some people aren't even in Congress or even running for president during this period. But you can see here, look at who the top 3 people are for Big Pharma money. Look, ladies and gentlemen, just take a look. Number 1, Kamala Harris. Number 2, if she was able to pop in right now, she'd love to do it herself because she's got this little impression of that very now infamous clip of Joe Biden saying, "I'll be your political whore. Give me some money. I'll be your whore." Joe Biden is number 2. This is the top 20 member recipients of money from pharmaceuticals and health products, pharmaceuticals from 1990 to 2024. Now, again, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, they weren't even around through a lot of this period, right? A huge chunk of this time frame, whereas somebody like Joe Biden has been around for over 4 decades. So this is including runs for the Senate, runs for the president, et cetera, et cetera. Joe Biden is number 2, followed by Barack Obama. Hillary Clinton is number 4, and Mitt Romney is number 5. Look. It just says, baby, like why this country has all the problems it has. We could go to the security and insurance industry, otherwise known as Wall Street, and you will see roughly the same names over and over and over and over. Defense gets a little hairy for Republicans because obviously there's a lot in defense. There are Republicans, again, Mitt Romney, I don't even know if you'd want to call them Republicans. Orrin Hatch only had an epiphany shortly before his exit from multiple places, the Senate and the world. All right. But before he did, he became friends with Donald Trump. And according to friends close to Orrin, a true convert. and a true friend of Donald Trump's. But he played the game for the rest of the time that he was in Washington, D.C. I mean, look at this. Frank Pallone is on this list, folks. That's how long this list is and how many years it crosses. All right, so Mitt Romney 6, Hatch 7, Esho 8, McCarthy was number 9. He's in the top 10. All right, Bob Casey, who was just defeated. Why? Because Bob Casey is a Democrat from Pennsylvania. We'll watch Dave McCormick's ass real close, and we'll see whether or not Merck, which has a huge amount of influence in southeastern Pennsylvania, also ends up being one of the top givers to their new senator. We'll see. But under Bob Casey, look who it is. Everybody's friend, Mitch McConnell. And right below Mitch McConnell, $100,000 less than $100,000 shy in total receipts is the senator himself from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. And I'll tell you something else. RFK, Sean, and the rest of us yesterday, RFK today, were being nice to him, as the research shows, because we weren't including longer periods of time. It's actually not 1.5, it's closer to 2. And he doesn't tell them to give to the PAC, because then he could be cute. And he could say, I never take big pharma's money from my PAC. Where they could write a check literally this size in one chunk. He's real cute, man. Give me a break, Bernie. Bend over, Bernie. And just so everybody can see this, make it a little bigger. Bend over, Bernie, ladies and gentlemen. A champion of nobody but him and his commie wife and their bank account. That's the only thing Bernie Sanders has ever championed. That and the Moscow cause. Pre-Putin. The Lenin cause. Unbelievable. Truly. All right. Enough of that there. Just keep an eye on that. I don't know if you're seeing that. But for some reason, every time I take away like a display or something, I personally come off the screen. I don't know. Maybe it's an update that needs to be done. All right, let's not forget about our friends over at the Wellness Company, and then we'll come back and get to the Gabbard hearing. All right. Our friends over at the Wellness Company trying, obviously, to see usher in an era like Rand Paul's talking about, right? And if RFK does get up in here, it's going to be a significant problem for these people, as we all know, right? We know people, we just went over the data, large sum of people suffering from these negative side effects from this damn global coercion, whether it's severe side effects or they have long COVID. It's a new natural solution by Dr. Peter McCullough, which is in collaboration with the Wellness Company. And they just leveled up their original detox for $30 less. This is the 3-in-1 ultimate spike detox, conveniently consolidated into a single capsule. 4 times nattokinase as before, 500 milligrams of bromelain, 500 milligrams of turmeric root extract. Nattokinase, for people who don't know, it's an enzyme for anti-clotting, and that's the point, obviously, to break down those spike proteins. Combined with bromelain and curcumin, it provides a potent blend for detoxification and cellular support. Crafted with 100% natural ingredients, backed by research, approved and used by Dr. Peter McCullough himself, who, of course, is a top freedom-fighting doctor who risked it all to fight against Fauci fascism. Say that 5 times fast. Head to twc.health, use the promo code TPP, and get yourself that new $30 off and also free shipping. Again, that's twc.health/TPP. Links in the description. Use the code TPP to get that chunk off and free shipping. But best of all, get back to that pre-COVID feeling. Bring back that pre-COVID feeling, right? All right. Let's get back. Oh, do it. Get it. I'm blowing up your spot. Let's do Gabbard's opening. This was like, I wanted to go run out and jump on a trampoline, make some popcorn, do a dance of joy, turn my pajamas inside out, whatever it is your freaky ritual is. This is Tulsi saying, if I am not confirmed, then I'm going to make it hurt. And I'm going to go down fighting. And she was fantastic in this opening statement. Somebody's just got to go head on at it. And I know what they're trying to do because they need their votes. I get it. Same reason why. It's like, why don't you go after Bernie Sanders for the money he took and the money they all take? Well, you got to walk a line and do it, but I would do it. I would do it exactly how RFK did it. And Tulsi is just, I told you it's been Pam for a long time, but I don't know. I don't know, Laura. I may be in love with a new political crush here. I don't know. The deep state is a formidable enemy, and she has no problem just taking them on. I've always been weary of Tulsi because she's a leftist, and it's like, I don't understand how you could be concerned about the deep state, but not concerned about giving the IRS the enforcement power over Obamacare. For me, it's like you're fundamentally misunderstanding the nature of government. It's not one thing over the other. Of course, they're more dangerous with certain things, but because the police state power is more dangerous in certain areas, right? Like so, obviously, deep state issues are going to be more severe, but it doesn't. Tell that to somebody who's been targeted by the IRS or something that's not also dangerous and stressful and, whatever it may be. I get that. It's just like I always was skeptical that she understood or had like a fundamentally sound understanding of the nature of government. And boy, I don't even care anymore. She's slaying it. Let's do it.
To my husband, Abraham, my family, friends, fellow veterans, Medal of Honor recipients, and patriots, thank you for your love and support. I'm honored and grateful to President Trump for his trust and confidence in nominating me to serve our country as the Director of National Intelligence at a time when trust in the intelligence community, unfortunately, is at an all-time low. Chuck Schumer admitted a few years ago, quote, "You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you."
Shot 2. I'm not
For
even
too long, faulty, inadequate, or weaponized intelligence have led to costly failures and the undermining of our national security and God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution.
Grenade one.
The most obvious example of one of these failures is our invasion of Iraq based upon a total fabrication or complete failure of intelligence. This disastrous decision led to the deaths of tens of thousands of American soldiers, millions of people in the Middle East, mass migration, destabilization, and undermining of the security and stability of our European allies, the rise of ISIS, strengthening of Al-Qaeda and other Islamist jihadist groups, and strengthening Iran. Here are just a few other examples. The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice, and yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation specifically to help Biden win the election. Former DNI James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible.
Okay, let me just pause her there, because those two things right there are, everything she just said is such an egregious violation of trust and the social contract. It's not even funny. I mean, the R word has happened for less, okay? That first part will come back and bite her when she talks about the metadata, and it's what I'm talking about. And you can see Langford, man, he is not to be trusted, that dude. He may get a good soundbite in and out when he wants, but he is your very typical Southern Republican who just cannot be trusted. Talks a big game, but ultimately you can easily imagine him in I should watch what I say. You could easily imagine him. Like, let me just put it this way. All right. I'm pretty sure that I could give Bronco an idea for his next cartoon where Langford is in like leather with a ball in his mouth and like Northcote Grumman is smacking him with the leather paddle. Okay. Like, I think I could do that pretty easily. All right. So he's not like, so he comes out and he tries to trip her up. He tries to hit her with the Snowden thing. All right. And the answer to that is very simple. You just stick to your guns because I know what she believes on this. And it's the same that I believe. I don't think that Snowden went through the proper channels and the proper process. He did try, although he didn't take it all the way. But at the end of the day, for me, I don't really give a shit. I don't really care. Because what Snowden laid out is 100,000 times more of a threat to me than what he did. And the one I really think I put some blame or more blame on, because there were things that were made public from Snowden's material that were stupid. Like most of the time when the intelligence agency says, we can't do this because we're going to compromise sources and methods. That's their textbook thing. Well, Assange was really the one who like kind of irresponsibly put it out. And he did because of his philosophy that they shouldn't edit anything. They later, because they were in partnership with like The Guardian and others, they later would agree to redact a lot of stuff. But this was laying out a program that we didn't know about, that Clapper would lie to that committee about under oath, and we never approved. We never had a national debate over it. The head, I would say the author, one of the key authors, Sensenbrenner, of the Patriot Act himself would later say that that is not what he intended with the Patriot Act. It is illegal. It's complete, and all of you should be terrified by what they were doing. And if that's true, then there's no way not to say that Snowden deserves thanks for giving us this revelation. The government had us in a position, folks, where they could, and I don't mean figuratively or, I'm not being hyperbolic here. They could have literally imposed a force on us with it's not even police state power. That's beyond police state power. They could have put us in a subjugation. It's that simple. And there's nothing we could have done about it, to fight back. And I'm sure they're still doing it now, and they're liars. I don't even believe that they're not, but without a doubt, it's not like a free-for-all like it used to be. It's just unfortunate that court is a rubber stamp for it all. When they even go to the court, it doesn't matter. And that's been proven. It doesn't matter that now they're supposed to have more rigid procedures, because those procedures, as she says, are totally violated on a daily basis. What Snowden showed us was something that a police state does to people who are not free. And no matter that he fled to Russia because he couldn't find another place that would keep him or hold him, whatever it may be, I'm not sure that any of that, for me, and you have your own opinion, but I don't think that any of that is so negative that it takes away from the good that he did by sharing and blowing the whistle on that information. And then, trust me, I can tell you, they say there's a whistleblower chain of command to go, they say there's a process, but when you get to that kind of a level, is there? I mean, he was running into obstructions with certain media outlets, even when they had the goods. The Obama administration almost killed it. They almost killed it with The Guardian. The Guardian was too afraid to run it. They last minute made the call to go with it. So imagine if he didn't have Glenn's help, if he didn't have the help and the partnership of others, all of these other big media outlets. And he didn't go through the process that he went through. Imagine if he didn't do that. Who would he have gone to? Rand Paul? Like, I mean, let's get real. They were calling him a quack every day. It would not have been a viable option. It would have been buried. What inspector general was he going to run to? The IC inspector general? Are you kidding me? No way. No way. So I don't like the idea of leaking stuff and then run into the enemy. But I'm not sure Snowden had another choice, guys. Not if he really wanted it to get out. I mean, he could have ruined his whole life for nothing and gotten nothing out of it by trying this chain, wind up getting busted, lose your job anyway, access to all those materials, like, which is called evidence. I mean, he really had no good option. And if another country had the gall to keep him, he would have stayed there. But instead, he can only find refuge in the arms of our enemies, because they were the only ones who had the gall to give him safe, to harbor him. Right? I don't know. I think, to me, I care more about what he exposed than the actions he took to expose them and the actions he took after. I really do. And I'm sorry if they exposed methods and secrets, and I really don't care. I mean, you should not have been partaking in that stuff, and you know that. So why should I feel bad for you? I'm serious. No, well, Richard, you're gonna say no? Yeah, you're gonna say no. Like, everybody has a choice. And let's be honest, after everything that was researched after that, ladies, doesn't it creep you out? Doesn't it creep you out that it appears that some people working at the NSA just spend their days hacking into your webcams so they can, like, doesn't that creep you a little bit, man? Like, that, it's beyond that. Beyond that. You want to give some, like, smart tech dork who picked his nose in your, like, junior English class decide one day, ooh, maybe I'll look her up and see what I can do. Come on, dude. No. They're not supposed to have this power. End of story. And I wish Snowden would have been able to go somewhere else too, but there's nowhere to run for someone who wants to expose that kind of, at that level. There's nowhere to run. Where are you going to go? Whistleblower. My foot. Happy? All I hear is through the door. Come on with the profanity. Go back to inside the numbers. This is between the numbers. New rules. Uh-oh. I think she's coming in. All right. Let's play the rest of the clip.
Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end. President Trump's re-election is a clear mandate from the American people to break this cycle of failure, end the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community, and begin to restore trust in those who've been charged with the critical task of securing our nation. If confirmed as DNI, I will do my very best to fulfill this mandate and bring leadership to the intelligence community with a laser-like focus on our essential mission, ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. As the President's principal intelligence advisor, I'll begin by leading by example, checking my own personal views at the door, and committing to delivering intelligence that is collected, analyzed, and reported without bias, prejudice, or political influence. I enlisted in the Army because of the horrific terrorist attack on September 11th and volunteered to deploy to Iraq in 2005, where I served in a medical unit. After nearly 22 years in uniform with 3 combat deployments to the Middle East and Africa, I'm now a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, where I serve as a battalion commander of soldiers in Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas. I served in Congress for 8 years on the Homeland Security, Foreign Affairs, and Armed Services committees. And it's my experience in the military and in the halls of Congress that have given me a deep understanding of the complex challenges that our nation faces, in both roles engaging with world leaders, in both roles being privy to highly classified intelligence. So I know firsthand how essential accurate, unbiased, and timely intelligence is to the President, to Congress, and to our warfighters. I also know the heavy cost of intelligence failures and abuses. Senator Collins, you led the creation of ODNI specifically to address those intelligence failures of 9/11 and Iraq's so-called WMDs. The need for the ODNI under strong leadership still exists today. If confirmed, I'll bring my experience and fresh eyes to leading the intelligence community. And my day one priorities will be to assess the global threat environment, identify where gaps in our intelligence exist, integrate intelligence elements, increase information sharing, and ensure that unbiased, apolitical, objective collection and analysis to support the President and policymakers' decision-making occur. I'll work to end the politicization of the intelligence community and ensure there is a clear mission focus in the IC on its core mission of this unbiased, apolitical collection and analysis of intelligence to secure our nation. I'll work to rebuild trust through transparency and accountability. This is a national security imperative. And I'll work to assess and address efficiencies, redundancies, and effectiveness across ODNI to ensure focus of personnel and resources is on our core mission of national security. Now, in my meetings that I've had with many of you, you expressed bipartisan frustration about recent intelligence failures as well as the lack of responsiveness to your requests for information. Whether it's the surprise October 7th Hamas terrorist attack, to the sudden takeover of Syria by Islamist extremists, failures to identify the source of COVID, anomalous health incidents, UAPs, drones, and more. If confirmed, I look forward to working with you to address these issues. Ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people is a mandate of leadership that rises above partisan politics. If confirmed, my commitment to the President, to you, and to the American people is this: I will do my very best to find the truth, no matter where it leads, and share that truth with President Trump, his advisors, and you in Congress, providing you with that unbiased, timely, and accurate intelligence as you make the tough decisions that'll impact the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. Now, before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home.
Here it is. Epic close.
You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States, accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed. The American people elected President Trump with a decisive victory and mandate for change. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet. I have no love for Assad or Gaddafi or any dictator. I just hate al-Qaeda. I hate that we have leaders who cozy up to Islamist extremists, minimizing them to so-called rebels. As Jake Sullivan said to Hillary Clinton, quote, al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Well, Syria is now controlled by an al-Qaeda offshoot. HTS, led by an Islamist jihadist who danced in the streets on 9/11 and who was responsible for the killing of many American service members. Democrat senators in the past resorted to anti-Christian bigotry against some of President Trump's judicial nominees like Amy Coney Barrett and Brian Boucher. I condemned those actions as a Democrat in Congress at the time, as religious bigotry must be thoroughly condemned by all of us, no matter the religion. Unfortunately, there are some Democrat senators who still don't understand the principle of freedom of religion and Article 6 of the Constitution. Quote, no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States.
This is in response to her basically people saying she's in a cult.
Unfortunately, they're once again using the religious bigotry card, but this time trying to foment religious bigotry against Hindus and Hinduism. If anyone is sincerely interested in knowing more about my own personal spiritual path of Hinduism, I welcome you to go to my account on X, where I'll share more on this topic. If confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will continue to live by the oath that I have sworn at least 8 times in my life, both in uniform and as a member of Congress. I will support and defend our God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to your questions.
All right. And then, of course, they went in, and they went in at her hard. And we'll have to take some clips of that and watch that tomorrow on Inside the Numbers, because I was looking at some of your comments, and maybe we just didn't get that across because Tuesday I had some unfortunate news that I got, which prevented me from doing this. But Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're largely going to do shorter versions of the show. It's not even really, I mean, it won't always be poll related. I'm going to end with a polling thing right now. But that's only to top off the point, and because it is kind of historic, especially from who it came from. And then I got to go get my kid, and that's just how it's going to be. Like, that's why they got to be shorter clips, shorter shows, because I do have to get my kid from the bus stop around 3:20, which is 12 minutes away, right? So with that in mind, I'm going to end with this. Republicans should keep this in mind as well, right? Poll came out from who we will now accurately call Herdiak University. They were trying, obviously, to do a better job, or at least trying to make themselves look like they were doing a better job. But then they heard it at the end and gave Harris a lead in Michigan. So, they're still up to their same crap. At least they didn't miss every single battleground state this year. But yesterday, a poll came out, which everybody in my industry was like, whoa. And I told you guys this was going to happen because I just didn't really see Democrats addressing the stuff that caused them to lose this election and doing better than you expected because Republicans were so bad is not the same thing as getting an affirmation from the voter. And that's what's happening to Democrats. So from Quinnipiac University, this poll comes out, which shows an astonishing plummeting in support for Democrats and their favorability. We will add this to the next poll, which we will conduct as soon as humanly possible. We just did 2. The public polling link is a public polling project link is in the description below if you want to help us get started with that. We're going to do a few things too, though, and we'll talk about this more on Inside the Numbers tomorrow. Obviously, they're trying bird flu stuff. I would really like to get into that. And then there's almost time for some of our annual questions. And when we're talking about these confirmation hearings, Tulsi's right. I mean, the level of trust in these institutions, all of them, that Trump's nominees are now getting grilled to lead, are abysmal. They're at regime failure levels. It's so bad. And if it wasn't the United States of America, it'd be like international panic over a failed state about to happen. It's that bad right now, folks. Here you have the one of 2 major parties that were about neutral on the Republican Party. It was -2. But again, that should be a warning sign to these senators who are no better than the Democrats who are shills like Bernie, right? In today's poll, 31% of voters have a favorable opinion of the Democratic Party. 57% have an unfavorable opinion. This is the highest percentage of voters having an unfavorable opinion of the Democratic Party since the Quinnipiac University poll began asking this question. Doesn't matter whether Quinnipiac is a shit pollster or not, and they are. It's the trend that matters, and they have switched their methodologies. So, I mean, of course, that certainly has to be taken into consideration, but they still had a Democratic bias built into their 2024 polling. All right. So this is not good news for the Democratic Party, and you're not going to get a single Democratic vote on the harder, more controversial Trump cabinet nominees. And they're on the, why are they controversial? Because these are nominees who are going to tackle big questions, big issues, and big challenges that the American public feels have been kicked down, kicked like a can down the road for way too many years. And if you want to get on the right side of this thing, if you want to separate yourself from it, then you could not, Fetterman's got he talks a good talk. But like him and Manchin always turned out to bitch out. Like at some point, somebody's got to have the courage to do something. Otherwise, your whole party's going to, your Senate map does not look good for you in 26. It does not look good. Everyone thinks that they're going to have some miraculous midterm. You're out of your mind. The only thing saving them in the House is redistricting, and the Senate is not favorable to them at all. They'll be defending more seats that are up for grabs. Especially look at what's going on in Michigan. There'll be an open Democratic seat. And by the way, that's going to be a problem down the road for Democrats in some of these states where they're just losing the voter registration drive. In Michigan, you can't tell because there's no party registration. All you can do is look at the vote patterns, the voting trends, and we can model them based on the attributes on their voter record. Those models do tell us that Michigan is getting more Republican, but it is most certainly Trumplican. But when you look at states that are very similar in some demographics like Pennsylvania, it's not looking good at all. All right. So it continues to go in the wrong direction in Pennsylvania. And then what about more Western states where it's more diverse, ethnically diverse? Well, it's not looking good for them in Nevada. It's not looking good for them in Arizona. In both of those, they have Democratic senators from both of those states. And in the case of Nevada, one barely eked out a win in the last midterm election. And they're now seeing for the first time ever more Republicans than Democrats. So I'm talking about overall registered. So it's just at some point, Washington's got to realize, yeah, you have you have donors and you have people who pay your bills, but none of that matters if you can't get elected. None of that matters if you can't get elected. And Republicans, no Republican should want to be appeasing, or trying to, make themselves a chameleon and to mirror the Democratic Party or their colleagues in the Democratic Party. They should be running away in unity against them in mass right now. And there should be Democrats following them, not the other way around. All right. But that's a product of the corruption in DC. All right. I'm going to go get my kid. Hope all of you have a great rest of the day. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and share them far and wide. And I will see you tomorrow. Again, 2 p.m. 2 p.m. All right. Tomorrow, because the girls are gone, I may start a little bit early if I can. This way, I don't have to worry about that running in the way. If I can get my other son to go get him, it doesn't matter at all. But that's the way it's going to be. I'm going to leave you with this clip from Vance. He heard us, obviously. I know, actually, our criticism. And he did a interview on Fox with everyone's favorite Fox host. And he said something that directly addressed some of the criticisms and changed his tune a little bit. And we'll keep an eye on him going forward to make sure that stays the case. But again, I'm going to roll into the end after this. I'm going to leave you with this clip from JD Vance on the media and credibility and all of that to come. Thanks for watching, folks. Don't forget, the best place to follow us is on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com. See you tomorrow.
I think that we are looking very seriously about which reporters show up, because if you're a reporter, even if you're biased towards the left, absolutely, we want to answer your questions. If you're a propagandist for the Democratic Party, then we're going to treat you like a propagandist for the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I think we've already done, again, we're only 8 days into this thing, is it's not just who's not there, it's also who is present. And Carolyn had a lot of new media folks, a lot of young people who represent, I think, the vanguard of news media in this country. She gave Matt Boyle from Breitbart a question yesterday. These are actually some of the people who are driving news in 2025 in America. And I think, frankly, the MSNBCs, the CNNs of the world, they should take the hint. Your viewership is way down. Your ratings are abysmal. Why is it that especially young people are tuning into new media? Maybe it's because instead of engaging in propaganda, the new media is asking real questions. I mean, Joe Rogan, one of the biggest voices in American media now, he was a Bernie bro 8 years ago. This is not like some crazy right-wing guy. This is just a person who's asking questions. And unfortunately, most of the old media, they're just not interested in that.